Hey guys, Dark Humility here. You have just waltzed in to the 2.6 Berserk Barbarian Guide. Ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the strongest builds for magic finding period, and when it comes to finding the ultra rare, unique, and set items in Diablo 2, he is bar none, the strongest magic finder. Excels in Players 1 and is an overall S tier build. This guide is being redone as a result of several changes to the Berserk Barbarian, including the changing up of the synergies for Berserk itself and introducing a official synergy for find item, changing how the build is performed overall, and also just to update the graphics as well. This is being done using gear from both my D2R Grail and my original LOD pluggy Grail. Of course, we will be going over the stats, the skills, the Mercenary, the gear, the do's and the don'ts, and of course plenty of demos for the standard build initially, and then of course we'll be showing several variations to the build that can be done in different circumstances or just when you have less gear overall. Of course, you can also check out the timestamps for every single one of these below, and of course chapters for every part of these guides of this guide so that you can refer to any part that you are most interested in. This guide, of course, this video guide will be embedded in the written full-length guide at maxroll.gg, where of course the highest quality Diablo 2 information is published. So if you want to learn Diablo 2, definitely make a trip over there. And of course, I also have several insane high quality guides for Diablo 2 as well on my YouTube channel. So yeah, definitely check those out. And of course, yeah, definitely check out the written guide once again in more detail for the Berserk Barbarian, as there's really a lot you can potentially do. But of course, without further ado, let's get into the meat of the guide and start talking about what the Berserk Barbarian is all about. So this is a magic find specialty build that uses find item, which is the most overpowered item finding skill in the game, which does take your magic find into account just as killing a monster does normally. It excels at elite farming, not boss killing, but elites killing them and then horking them or using find item on them for an additional item. And it is incredibly effective at doing so. It has the fastest teleport frames in the game for fast teleports, so it teleports as fast as a sorceress. And once again, really doesn't need much to actually kill things and to execute its strategy, making it very easy to stack magic find on it. And once again, we'll be demoing him in Players 1. But yeah, let's get more into the meat of it. This is a level 96 Barbarian. What you want to do in general is you can really put in any amount of strength that you want, but keep in mind you kind of want to balance survivability with damage. I like to put in somewhere between like 50 to 100 extra points in strength to make it to where I'm more likely to one-shot an elite. That's really the key with the Berserk Barbarian, is making sure that you are capable of performing the one-shot, if possible, at least 1 to 2 hits. You don't want to be swinging at him forever, unless it's earlier on in the game with weaker weapons, and that's just the best you can do. But generally, you want to put points into strength to do that. You're going to want to put in at least enough dexterity to wear your gear, which would be the Grief Phase Blade. Phase Blades require 136 dex at minimum. You can even put in some extra points for more attack rating, as I recommend on the standard version of the build having at least about 10,000 attack rating. That is indeed ideal. You can always have more as well, which can help your hit rating even a bit more. But in general, I feel like that's a good balance. You can always put more dexterity in, though, if you're having trouble hitting enemies and your attack rating is not around 10,000. Defense is a totally useless stat on this build because Berserk will set your defense to 0 when you attack. So you have no defense when you are attacking. So you've got to keep that in mind. Berserk itself is a magic damage skill. So unlike a lot of physical attacking skills in Diablo 2, it is a physical damage skill. I mean, sorry, it is a magic damage skill. It is a misspeak. Yeah, so it is a magic damage skill. Your backup skill does physical damage in case you encounter physical immunes, which is your 1-point concentrate, which is very useful. The fact that you have both physical and magic damage means that on this build, you really don't need things like Sunder Charms, as it's not really going to be super useful. You don't come across physical and magic immunes very often, so that is indeed the case. But yeah, this Leviathan of magic finding can kill most everything with the magic damage in very efficient areas for this particular build. Alright, and then of course you put the rest of your points after you're done kind of getting some strength or dex to maybe make sure you have enough attack rating and enough strength to maybe bolster your damage. Oddly enough, even though it is not a physical damage skill, it's a physical damage conversion skill, so it's converting your physical damage to magic damage, which means that putting points into strength will increase your damage. So that's a little confusing. Like normally, like strength, you know, you wouldn't think of it as increasing another element of damage, but the magic type damage in Diablo 2, which is distinct from all the other types, once again, it's not like fire, cold, lightning, is it will pretty much kill almost everything because there aren't many magic immunes in the game, but you're converting your physical damage to the magic damage, just to clarify that. And then you don't need any points into energy because Barbarian scales very poorly off of energy. It scales very well off of vitality, though, getting 4 life per point into vitality. So in general, it's very good for, to have this for high survivability. Resistances really depend on where you're farming. This build definitely can get by without a lot of resistances due to its kit. It doesn't really get hit super often and take tons of damage. I mean, the idea is kind of to make it to where you don't get hit. We'll talk about that more at the skill how, but that's really the most important thing there. So you definitely take that into account, no problem. And of course, you can just have a decent, like, I like having good res no matter what, but just keep in mind it's not really the most important aspect of a Berserk Barbarian is getting high res, unless you're playing hardcore, and then you want to make sure your res are at least maxed for sure. Damage reduction is very nice. Once again, though, not super necessary. And if you're farming Travancore, Gold Find can be very useful. Berserk Barbarian is one of the best Travancore farmers, period, for just high efficiency, if not the most efficient build for doing so. So it has a lot of really ultra efficient farms, and that's one of them. If you stack Gold Find, you can gamble with it, and you can have the most efficient gambler in the game potentially. There's a lot of builds that can do Gold Find efficiently, though. If you want to check out the Gold Find Barbarian guide on Max Roll, there's a few different approaches for that, but yeah, for sure it's pretty good. And then of course you have the most important stat on this build, oddly enough, because it is a solo magic finding specialty build, is your magic find. You're going to want to make sure you stack as much of that as you physically can. And yeah, keep in mind there's heavy diminishing returns on magic find for unique items and set items to some degree as well. But the thing about this build is that you don't really need much to actually do the damage. So really what you're looking at is being able to just stack as much magic find as you can, and you have that capability to do so. So this makes this build pretty much #1 for grailing on the single player. It makes it insane for running terror zones just to strike the elites and possibly get those insane items, even from areas that normally can't drop them because it's terrorized. The high area level can make up for it. Pretty insane stuff. He's really capable of it all. You're going to want to hit at least 42 attack speed. You can hit higher, of course, but you're going to want to hit at least 42 attack speed for fast attack speed on this build. It's going to make it pretty nice. But yeah, there are higher breakpoints you can definitely take advantage of as well. For the most part, though, that's like quote-unquote maximum attack speed while maximizing your magic find efficiency. So, yeah, don't worry about it too much. Phase Blade is the fastest base in the game. That's why we put it in there. And you're going to want 42% attack speed with the Grief itself. So, usually the Grief has to roll at least 32 in order to make best use of this. But you can also do it using like High Lords and Laying of Hands as well. You can hit like 72, 75, right? And you can have even more attack speed if you want. But at any rate, it's a pretty good approach. You know, you can have more attack speed also to guard against Decrepify in certain areas like Chaos. So all that stuff is very good. Remember to check the exact breakpoints and everything for all your builds, though, in the breakpoints section, though, on the written Maxwell guide. Alright, and then of course, Now Be Frozen is usually important on this build. I'm not going to say it always is because it kind of depends on what you're farming. You can get away without using this stat, kind of like you can get away with it on some bosons and things that don't always get frozen, but it's incredibly important for most farms as it's going to drastically slow your ability to attack and whatnot and to do damage, and it will drastically lower your efficiency. It is also key that on weapon swap, you're hitting 105% faster cast rate at minimum. You can also hit 200 FCR with a mobility build, which you won't really be going over here, but you can check it out on the Maxwell guide. And it's also an insanely solid approach at the expense of some magic find, and also takes some very specialized items to do, but you can definitely do that as well. 105 FCR, though, is the second fastest frame period for faster cast rate in the game, so you'll be teleporting very fast. The idea, of course, is to balance all these different stats and to maximize your magic find, to maximize efficiency. For the most part, none of the other stats are super important, but you know, the target defense, deadly strike is all going to add to your damage as well, and just make it to where you're more likely to one-shot those elite monsters. So that's all really good stuff. In general, that's what you want. You want high damage for the one-shot. You want attack rating. You want at least decent res. Doesn't need to be insane unless you're playing hardcore, then I always recommend having max or overstacked resistances across the board, except for poison, where it's not super important. And then, of course, damage reduction also depends a bit on hardcore as well. And you can definitely have 50% on this build. You know, we'll show you guys different pieces of gear you can definitely use to make that happen. And overall, you just really want to stack Magic Find, hit at least the 42 attack speed breakpoint with the Phase Blade, and then of course you want to have Cannot Be Frozen. So, all very good stuff, all very important stuff. But let's go over the skills as well so you guys can understand. So this is like the main thing that really changed since patch 2.4, I would say, and there's a lot of major changes to how to actually build the bar because of this. This is really what makes my previous video really outdated. You know, things like Sunder Charms don't really matter too much because, you know, you just like slap on a Sunder Charm, add some resistance. It's pretty self-explanatory what you can do with that on most builds. But like something like this, it's a pretty big change. So the Berserk Barbarian still goes maximum Blade Mastery because you want that crit strike damage and attack rating. It's just the most efficient way to get it. You go 1 to increase speed and then 1 into natural resistance as well. And you can even put additional points into natural res if you want to shore up your resistances. But keep in mind that it's got diminishing returns, and with just 1 point into it, typically, it's already pretty high. You'll also be maxing out Berserk. That's pretty key stuff for sure. You can definitely max out the Berserk. And maxing out Berserk in general is always a good choice. You could put a point into leap as well, which sometimes is actually quite nice on this build. Um, but it's not absolutely necessary. But you can do that as well. You can even put a point into leap attack as well. And you can have kind of like a secondary way to kill monsters. But for the most part, you're just going to want to make sure no matter what you have maximum Berserk. And as you can see, the synergies here are Howl and Battle Orders. And that's also where you're going to be putting all. I recommend maxing Howl if it's on softcore, because Howl, the radius is really big. If you have a smaller radius, monsters will still like detect you and encroach on you. You really want to fear all the monsters away from the elites. So the way it works is an elite monster doesn't get feared by a Howl. It can't be feared by a Howl, but all the regular monsters and minions can be. So they all split and separate away from the elite if you just teleport directly on top of it and Howl, and then you can just start swinging. So not only that, but it's also a really high duration in case you just want to keep swinging at nearby elites as well, like there's multiple of them and whatnot, but they run really far away. Radius is really far, so the monsters won't bother you in general. So in general, that's a really good thing to take into account here. But yeah, you can definitely get leaps sometimes to like help split the monsters even more. That can be a thing as well. And of course, you are going to make sure you at least get 1 point of battle command. That's just a free skill, so there's no reason not to do it. 1 point shout will help at least the mercenary survive a bit more. It won't do too much for you, but while you're teleporting, it gives you some extra defense, so that's good. And that's because, once again, Berserk completely removes your defense, which is kind of lame. But it's a downside for how much magic damage conversion it has. It just does so much damage that you don't need to worry about anything. And the other main thing is that this is a synergy, and arguably in hardcore you want to focus this synergy a bit more than on softcore, but it really is a balance. You don't have to max Howl. You could put like half Howl, half Battle Orders, maybe even more focus on Battle Orders on hardcore, and then Howl. Kind of get a feel for it. It depends on where you're farming to and like the monster density and things like that. There really is a lot of factors that play into like exactly what you want to do here, but just keep in mind that everything Diablo 2 is a balancing act, and ever since patch 2.4 this build has become not quite as straightforward, and the main reason for that is that besides changing up the synergy, which is Battle Orders now, which is nice for just survivability in general and quality of life, and that also increases your Berserk damage. But the main thing here is the Find Potion synergy and Find Items. So the really big highlight of Berserk Barbarian has always been achieving really high level Find Item. Typically you'd go for 55 or 56%, which is what you might remember from any previous video if you watched my previous one. Now though, you can very comfortably go for 72, 73%. And it's even possible to go higher than that, but it takes so much skill point investment, I'm not really sure it's worth it. Versus like making sure you have enough points into synergies for damage and whatnot. Because, you know, lacking that one shot messes up efficiency slightly more than just having like 1% more Find Item, for instance. So it really is a balancing act, like I said, and this build has a lot of those very interesting aspects to take into account. So, yeah, very good stuff in general. Very good stuff. At any rate, I think we'll actually show like having the 1 point leap as well. I mean, on max roll, I show you guys, you know, what I would do personally in most of those situations, but it really depends, and there's just a lot of different like factors to take into account. But you're gonna want that blade mastery. You're using swords no matter what. And let's kind of finish talking about this though. So Find Potion, in general, you're gonna want to max Find Potion. Yeah, that's kind of strange, but it's giving you 1% per level no matter what, which isn't always the case for Find Item. Find Item will eventually get to a point where it stops giving you 1% every level, whereas this is 1% every level no matter what. You look at that synergy there, it says 1% chance per level, just flat. And then what you do is you just put enough points into find item until you hit like 71, 72, 73%. You can even go as high as 74, 75% if you want. And heck, even higher than that, I believe it might be possible. But the diminishing returns get really heavy, around like 72, 73% currently. So that's typically where I like to kind of sit, and then maybe focus on getting more Berserk synergies. But that's it, pretty much. That's it for the skills. It's a little complicated now. It did used to be quite that complicated, but it really is a lot of preference. Even putting more points into strength, putting more points into dex is preference based on trying to min-max your attack rating against different elite monsters. Remember, elite monsters, ignore target defense doesn't work against them, so you really need that attack rating. That's the same for bosses as well. Now the target defense will to some degree, but you really want to make sure you have high hit rating because that's going to maximize your efficiency on this build. Alright, so enough about that nonsense. Let's talk about the Mercenary. So my aura, oddly enough, does actually increase Berserk damage. Once again, actually I don't think the Mercenary currently has his aura. I don't know. Can we proc it? Maybe I'll have him attack some monsters in Act 4 or something. There we go. So, there's a visual aid there. So our Berserk damage just went up. Now, it's way higher than that because if you don't know about Grief, Grief is that damage plus 392 is added to both your minimum and maximum damage, but it's hidden damage on the character sheet, so you can't see it. And the reason why Grief is so insane is because if you think about it, no other weapon does. What would this one do as an example? It would do 427 damage. 427 damage. 427 damage to 432 damage. So the minimum and maximum range is just insane on this weapon. Absolutely insane. But what it's only showing here is actually the 35 to 40 damage plus the power of Berserk. That kind of shows you, though, 835% magic damage is just insane. So it's actually making it pretty decent with just that. But you're actually doing some pretty crazy amount of damage. You're doing like 10k plus damage, minimum and maximum, pretty much. So don't worry about the actual damage number. Same on concentrate, by the way. It's very, very deceiving. Extremely deceiving. But yeah. Anyway. It's always good stuff. And of course, gonna want to make sure that you're min-maxed for the damage as much as possible. At any rate, that's why we have my aura on the Mercenary. And of course, there's one thing you absolutely don't want to do, which we'll go into it a bit later. It might be tempting to have Holy Freeze on something like this to prevent monsters from hitting you. You absolutely don't want to do that if you want efficiency on a Berserk Barbarian. And that's because you can't have any cold damage anywhere on your build or Mercenary or anywhere. That is, of course, something we will go into more depth on here in a moment. But yeah, you absolutely do not want any of that nonsense. Period. So, yeah. Really, really nasty stuff. Don't want any cold damage. So you want him to have might, you want to give more damage to your Berserk, and then there's a lot of weapons that do cold damage, so this is kind of the issue here. You know, you have Reaper's Toll, which would increase your damage because it's physical damage converting into magic damage, but it has cold damage on it, so you don't really want to use that. Insight gives the Merc a lot of damage. It helps out with your damage in Players 1 quite a bit. And it gives you Sustain, which is really good because it allows you to kind of smoothly transition from one elite pack to the next while you're transitioning, so that's good. But there's other weapons that give cold damage too. And there's even armors that give cold damage. There's even helmets that give cold damage, like Vampire Gaze. You don't want those. Of course, something like this is really nice if you can get Life Leech elsewhere, or even if you don't get Life Leech elsewhere, you can it totally can work because you're doing players 1, and the mercenary won't be taking that much damage. You don't need life leech on this build, but if you do have it elsewhere, it makes it even easier to go G-Face. You can go like G-Face and Chains of Honor or something like that. You can totally do that. What I like doing is just making sure the mercenary can attack as fast as possible while proccing Crushing Blow and Crit Strike and Deadly Strike and just getting these really hard-hitting hits in. So getting that attack speed on the Treachery is also very good. One thing you can also do is have the mercenary also finish off some elite monsters, or just have more of a chance of doing that because his magic find will add on to yours. And it actually makes it possible to get far above 1,000 magic find on a Berserk Barbarian. So keep that in mind. You can get like you could get Tomb Reaver with just Ist runes all the way down. You can get Scolders, and then on top of that, you can even get Steel Skull, which has magic find and life leech. So you can also use a build like that as well. The clear downside of that, though, is that the mercenary won't be quite as effective at helping you kill the elite monsters, or even like getting items from random monsters around you. Since you have so much magic find, even in players 1, the mercenary can often just give you just random items from the other monsters it's just killing just by happenstance. So it's actually not a bad idea to have the mercenary do some damage like I'm doing here, really focusing that damage, helm, and attack speed. But the big loss, of course, would be the meditation aura, no matter what. This build is very mana intensive. You do a ton of teleporting, and obviously even Berserk costs some mana as well, and every other skill. You also have Owl costing mana, find item costing mana. Everything's costing mana to some degree. They're not super expensive, but teleport is. Teleport, as you can see, is you want to teleport on your weapon swap, of course, but even that is bad. 16 mana, that's a lot. And notice that I don't have tons of mana on this build. I really don't. And so that's actually pretty typical for Berserk Barbarian. Typically, can actually be very difficult to deal with the mana. And oftentimes even magic find mana charms are even preferred for that reason, but we'll go over that in a second. Anyway, that's pretty much the mercenary. Another thing you don't want to do on the mercenary is no fortitude. The chilling armor proc is cold damage. So all that cold damage, can't have it anywhere on the mercenary or on any piece of your gear. Even one magic find charm with cold damage is bad. Just little tiniest bit of cold damage will freeze the monster and make a chance to where when it shatters, it won't leave behind a corpse, which means you might not get corpses with your elite monsters, your council members, which function as like mini bosses. Dropping all those items, you lose out on that chance of that fine item. It's actually really, really bad when that happens. So keep that in mind. I think I'm actually gonna swap some of these out for a few mana charms. Actually, I'm a big fan of mana charms. I think mana charms are very good on this build. Having really low amounts of mana kind of feels bad. So. But we'll go over all the different things you can do though. So let's do that now. Let's start going over the gear. So ideally you have Grief, but other things that work pretty well on this build would be Unbending Will, would be like the first thing you can maybe encounter. That 6-socketed Phase Blade new rune word from patch 2.4. That's not bad, but it does so much less damage than Grief, but it can still be made in the fastest weapon in the game, and it can still be pretty solid. Oath is also really solid in a two-handed ethereal weapon, 4 sockets. You get a ton of damage with it as well. Let's actually show you guys some of these options. We'll actually show you guys how much damage you kind of do with these, just so you can see. But I would say these are definitely the two other primary weapon items for actually dealing damage. Damage is important on Berserk. It scales insanely well. Grief is obviously crazy compared to like every other option, especially in the fast weapon base, which is what you're gonna want. But yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff. You wouldn't be able to use Death, though, even if you wanted to, even if you want to use the slower one, because it has Glacial Spike chance to cast, which is, once again, more cold damage. But as you can see, all these stats are nuts on it. Deadly Strike, even the life after each kill provides some decent sustain. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. Let's go over the offhand, though. So on the offhand, typically, you just want to stack Magic Find, and by the way, you always want to put Grief, obviously. You always want to put your damage weapon, the weapon that actually does damage on the Berserk Barbarian, on the left-hand side. They changed it. It used to be like you can change which hand you're using based on like lifting them up, but that's no longer the case. It's always the left-hand weapon now is your main weapon. Your off weapon, the right-hand one, is going to be Magic Find. And since the attack speed on your offhand doesn't matter anymore, you can even use things like Alibabas, you can use Gold Dagger, it really doesn't matter, but you just really want to put Magic Find here. The best being, of course, 180% Magic Find from a 6-isted sword, and then Alibaba probably being second best, and then third best being a Gold Dagger. You know, take advantage of the fact that Barbarian can wield 2 weapons, and use those weapon Magic Find items. Most you can get in a shield is 100, so yeah, it's not super good. However, on more defensive versions of this build, or more damage-oriented ones, maybe for just setting up high player count Diablo and whatnot, or helping out with it, doing some chaos preparation, which used to be much more important in the leveling meta, but not so much anymore. It's definitely still something you can do with him, though, and make him just really strong. You can use things like Storm Shield, and there's definitely some shields that can also get the job done, too, in terms of just providing a basic amount of Magic Find and some other key stats like Rhyme. But besides that, that is what you're going to want to do. And, you know, you can see Rhyme right here. I actually have it to kind of show off some other approaches as well. But it doesn't matter. The attack speed of the offhand doesn't matter anymore. You just really need to make sure that main weapon isn't a Phase Blade. On your weapon swap, you have a bunch of different options. Your main options, most of the time, you could put more Magic Find if you want. If you're doing like Travancore, I would just stack. You could even put like 2 times 6-isted swords, or even 6 Lem swords if you're doing Gold Find. And then you can Hork the council members using those. So that's definitely a possibility. Or 2 Alibabas with Isrunes. So if you're only doing Travancore, that tends to be pretty good, because you don't really need much teleport speed, so it's not super important for efficiently farming Travancore. But for like almost every other farm, you can also use your best judgment on Pindleskin too, but you know, teleport speed does still kind of matter there. But you can do all that, of course. You can definitely focus more Magic Find on this build in a lot of different ways. But at any rate, most of the time you're looking for faster cast rate items. You need really high cast rate. It's because everywhere else in your build, you're just trying to focus Magic Find, and the only place where you should be teleporting and where you can really get tons of faster cast rate is on these offhand, sorry, not offhand, but weapon swap weapons. Typically, suicide branches are seen as like the gold standard on this build, and the reason why is that you get extra skills into really get those extra skills into find item. Now you'll notice here that we have 73% chance of find item, and you get those extra skills in swap. As a matter of fact, I think so as a matter of fact, I think we actually put too many points into it for the swap, but at any rate, that's what you want to do in general. Yeah, make sure to check what your find item is on the weapon swap that you want to Hork with. So that's also something to talk about here when we talk about weapons, is that you're going to want to make sure that if you use find item on your offhand with suicide branches or Hodos or whatnot, you're going to get a lot more plus skills, and those plus skills will increase your level of find item. In general, the higher level find item is better, but a lot of people like to Hork on their main hand because a lot of the times you have more Magic Find on your main hand, unless you're using, you know, 6-isted swords on the weapon swap and you're not doing much teleporting. But if you are, really want to make sure that you are trying to figure out what you want to do. Now keep in mind, if you hork on your main hand, the horks will be a lot slower. And if there's other monsters that die nearby the elite, sometimes you'll hork one of them before the elite, and it can kind of slow you down not having that hork speed. I personally like most of the time to hork on my swap because it's much smoother and allows you to go right back to teleporting immediately afterwards. So you really want to make sure that you skill this character to get, you know, somewhere between 71 to 73 find item on your offhand, or even 74% or 75 if you really want to push it. It's possible. Like, I'll show you guys here. I think I hit, yeah, we hit 74% with the Hodo. But the problem with the Hodo, though, in this case is we wouldn't be hitting 105 FCR on our offhand, be hitting 98, which in case you can make up for it by using like a 10 FCR ring if you want to. There's a lot of different things you can do. But I thought it was important, kind of, while we're talking about the gear, really talk about how that works. Is putting more MF on your weapon swap really depends on if you're teleporting a lot or not, and then determining kind of your preference for whether you not want to hork on your main hand for more magic find on the actual find item itself, or faster find item, which allows you to start teleporting quicker. They're both about just as efficient. It kind of just depends. Remember that, you know, I'll show you guys here. Like, this is pretty demonstrative of what I'm trying to talk about here. So you have 767 on your main hand, but you still have 617, or, you know, with Istid suicide branches, or even, you know, if you don't want the plus skill to the find item, like even wizard spikes. Wizard spike would be the other major item. The thing about wizard spikes is they would help your res a lot as well, and they also help out your mana. So it makes teleporting often feel a lot smoother. But you can definitely use your wizard spikes on swap as well, and you don't have to worry about mana as well. If you're not using insight on your mercenary, you almost certainly have to use wizard spikes, I would say. But at any rate, like, if you use this on here on the weapon swap, I still have 647 magic find. And now when I use find item, which requires faster cast rate, just like teleport does, you know, obviously like concentrate, berserk, or attack speed, but yeah, it's pretty telling no matter what, though. It's just pretty telling stuff just in general that you absolutely want to do that. It's very good. But yeah, at any rate, that's what you're gonna want to do, and it's good stuff in general. So yeah, make sure that you have your magic find. Make sure you figure out exactly like where you want to hork, and make sure that you put your points into find item accordingly to just barely hit that break point for that percentage that you want. Alright, we talked a lot about that because I think a lot of that's kind of very important stuff. Enigma is kind of a no-brainer. If you can get Enigma, get it. It gives you tons of magic find as well, and it also allows you to teleport, and it gives you tons of strength for damage. It really gives this build everything it could possibly want, even faster unlock for like running briefly in between elites to use Berserk on and whatnot. Okay, then of course you also have the Helm, Harlequin Crest, Shaco. This is pretty standard. Has a lot of MF, has DR. Getting a Cham rune in it is optimal if your source of cannot be frozen to maximize magic find on this build. But you can also go like Cham, Perfect Topaz, IK Helm for slightly more MF at the expense of all these other stats. But all these stats are very useful, and in general, this is something you definitely want to look into. I mean, a 220 Barb Helm could be used for the mobility to hit 200% faster cast rate, for instance. You could even use like a pure magic find helm. So you could use like a Artisan's Tiara of Good Luck, or Artisan's Tiara of Luck. Artisan's Tiara of Luck would give you the most amount of magic find that's physically possible, which would be 110, I believe. So you can definitely do things like that as well. But in general, that's a very solid helm. Amulets pretty much is between High Lords, which would give you allow you to hit the faster attack speed breakpoints a little bit easier, also help protect you against Decrepify in certain farming areas a bit easier, and would give you a lot of extra damage with the Deadly Strike percent, making it much more likely that you are to Deadly Strike and increasing that one-shot potential. But if you're not using High Lords, and what else is very effective, especially in areas like the pit where the monsters are such low health anyway, would be the faster cast rate caster amulet approach, where you could really have anywhere from 5 to 20 faster cast rate that can help you hit that 105 breakpoint, depending on if you're using Hodos or Suicide Branches and Wizard Spikes, or and things of that nature. Remember, double Hodo can get you a lot of skill points to find items, so if you're working under offhand, so there's definitely some real advantages to that. As you'll see though, this is kind of nutty, this amulet, because it's getting us 105 FCR plus Barb skills, plus even more than 20 mana, which is more than it typically can give, and it's almost giving the max amount of MF that can even spawn on an amulet like this, which is 35. So Magic Find is kind of nutty, and no matter what, work or otherwise, the amulet will apply to both. So it's really nice to get just that extra Magic Find. It's helping us hit a few extra breakpoints, because there's diminishing returns for unique items dropping. There are technically breakpoints for Magic Find at the very high end of the spectrum. They become more pronounced as well. It could take like 12 MF, around 600 MF to get to the next breakpoint, maybe more than that. In terms of like 1%, just 1% more chance to find a unique magic item. So those do matter though on this build, because this build is all about Grail maximum efficiency and finding those ultra rare unique items. Anyway though, I think we kind of went over that. You're gonna pretty much have to have a 220 Barbarian amulet, by the way, if you do decide to indeed go for the 200 faster cast rate approach, so that is the case. Alright, and then of course, gloves are pretty much one of two things as well. It's pretty much either Laying of Hands. You could also go like a Crushing Blow attack speed glove as well with Magic Find. That could also be good. The Laying of Hands is really good because it kills a lot of those demon monsters and just increases your damage. Gives you that attack speed like I mentioned before. Can help you swing incredibly fast. So notice here, this is Berserk. Berserk in general is just very good stuff. But yeah, at any rate, I'm gonna teleport around. Then use Berserk like that. Either left or right click, doesn't really matter. But that's pretty fast, right? That's pretty fast. So what we're gonna do now, we will swap out a couple pieces of gear here, just to kind of show you something different a bit here. So notice that I'm swinging faster, right? It's kind of cool. But yeah, it doesn't really matter. Am I swinging faster, actually? I believe so. But even if I'm not, like I said, it's also good against Decrepify. I think the breakpoint is, yeah. Let me see here real quick. Just want to make sure I'm giving the right information on the breakpoint real quick here. Thought I knew we were good there. See, the thing about the Barbarian though is like, it doesn't hurt to have extra attack speed, because a lot of the times you want to farm Chaos and Worldstone anyway. So like, having extra attack speed is just good, so you're not swinging very slowly, because that's really the way that you kill the monsters, and it's very important. Feels really strange. Let's see. Yeah, so they're both frame 9, but 72 does make it a tiny bit faster. That's what I thought. So they both kind of feel similar. So this right here is 89%, so I'm hitting 72 attack speed right now. For the most part, you just need to hit 42 though, because it's frame 9. That's what I was confused on, you know. I thought I remembered that as well. But you'll notice though, it's pretty much still the same, right? It's still the same. Right. So yeah, either way, they're good. But of course it also protects against Decrepify like I mentioned before. So there are reasons to get that extra attack speed. The main reasons though I personally like using these two items on this build though are the increased damage there. Fire res is also very good. And then also just the deadly strike. So once again, damage, damage, damage for that one-shot potential. It's just super important. Super, super important. Okay, so the other thing is that, you know, you can even use other bases for your grief if you really want to. Hitting 89% attack speed, for instance, would allow you to use a grief Zweihander, and grief Zweihander as well could potentially be used for making that damage all much better as well. So you can kind of like, you could hit the same breakpoint for attack speed on a Zweihander, but you need a lot more attack speed to do it. So having even more attack speed can be very useful for that as well. And in general, it's just very good. It's got like higher range, so like it'll help you do more damage against monsters in more scenarios, because Grief has a range I think of 2, and Zweihander I think has a range of 3. I might be wrong on this, it might be like 3 or 4. And so like the reach of the weapon itself oftentimes contributes to faster kills on Berserk. Some people don't prefer Phase Blade, but Phase Blade makes it easy because you can just stack MF in these two places, and you don't necessarily have to worry about getting more Magic Find. So once again, another preference-based thing on the Berserk Barbarian. On a really cheap version of the Berserk Barbarian, you can also go 3 or 4 piece Saigons for attack rating and for attack speed and for Magic Find. It's also something to take into account. But this is the Magic Find gloves. Always do that. Gold Wrap is always solid, of course, as well. Gold Wrap will always be a solid approach, no matter what. Always go Gold Wrap, so that's always good stuff. And then of course, War Traps has maximum MF. This is going to give us the attack speed to hit minimum of 42 on this build. This is going to give us maximum MF and physical damage to add to our damage. It's pretty much nothing better than War Traps on this build. You can go Gore Riders to increase your damage, but that's about it. You can go Res if you really need it, but like I said, you don't really need Res too much. You want that MF, you want that attack speed, it's perfect. Even the Gold Find for Trav on that would be pretty nice. If you're going for Gold Find, you really want to go Gold Find items though, like Crown of Thieves, Dwarf Stars. You would still go Chance Guards and Gold Wrap. But you can also go like things like Inferno Stride as well, Gold Find Boots. Definitely can do all that. Now, Nasal Rings are pretty much best in slot most of the time, but FCR, attack rating MF rings are also good depending on your MF breakpoints, so also keep that in mind. But these give you both attack rating and Magic Find, so those are both pretty darn solid. And then, of course, we have Res, MF, Mana, Res, Damage. So there's a lot of types of stats that can be good under small terms. But you don't need plus skills, and you don't really need maximum damage. Keep those things in mind. You can go maximum damage. You can definitely focus maximum damage. You can even shore up your AR with these, but you can have max damage ARGCs if you want. But for the most part, those aren't going to be as efficient for the primary use of this build, which is finding those items. And so you just want to stack Magic Find charms everywhere. And ideally, this is like the ideal charm for most of your inventory because it gives you maximum damage, AR, and MF. But In a lot of cases, you need res. In a lot of cases, mana helps with the teleporting without using mana pots. There's a lot of potential things to think about here. Attack rating for just making it more possible to hit them. This is you can hit up to 36 attack rating if there's no max damage. And max damage means you can only hit up to 20. So you can use these as well. These can also be useful. The max damage AR charms. There's just really a lot of types of charms that can be useful, but in general, they all have to be magic fund. And then, of course, Geed's Fortune. It's just a balancing act, just kind of try to figure out, min-max it kind of how you want. On the Maxwell guide, it pretty much just shows these because if you had like perfect gear, that's what you want. And then Geed's Fortune, you want the unique charms, of course. Maximum attribute Barb Torch is definitely preferred for all that dex and strength. Nihilist Charm you just max out, and then of course Geed's Fortune, you want 40 Geed's Fortune. And if you're doing gambling, and if you're doing trap farming, the other two stats can be important as well. The 160% gold find, you'd use gold find charms instead, by the way, if you're really focusing gold find, you do that as well. And you can focus wealth as well. Don't even have teleport. You can use like a teleport amulet instead with wealth, so you can teleport to trap and have 300% gold find. Gold find, there really are a lot of different things you would do. Lem's swords instead of Istid swords. But at any rate, 160 extra gold find from monsters would be good. Vendor price is very important if you're doing any kind of crafting or gambling on this character. Alright. And of course, keep in mind, if you're doing things like gold finding, gambling coronets at like level 95, really good. Level 93 and level 95 tend to be really big levels for crafting and gambling some of those high value items in general, so do keep that in mind. Once your character hits to about that level, those caster amulets become very lucrative. As long as you're at least like, you're also getting like maximum chance to get +2 skills even on gambled amulets as well at 95. So yeah, there's just a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff to take into account here. But at any rate, I feel like we've spent probably enough time on the gear overall. Let's start showing what this build is truly capable of. Really spent a ton of time on the gear, talking about some nuances with the attack speed even, the breakpoints, the faster cast rate with find item, and where you want to use it. Yeah, there's just a lot. It's a very mechanically intensive build in terms of how to build it. But once you actually start playing it, it's not too bad. You do have to get used to some of the controls though, for sure. We're going to test this regular build in Players 1. Most of the time on a Berserk Barbarian, you actually prefer solo gameplay because the monsters have less health. Elite monsters will drop a magic or higher item no matter what. That includes unique monsters like Pindle that will drop 2 of those items no matter what. You can't influence it by player count, and those are the monsters you're going to want to target. So don't worry about increasing player count for more drops. Some people like to go to P3 because maybe the Mercenary can get some more items off of the minions in some cases. Also, when you hork them, doesn't matter. But horking is always the same percentage. Player count doesn't matter. Player count only increases item drops from regular monsters and minions, not the elite monsters. The champions, the special name monsters, that always spawn, those are super uniques. They always spawn 2 items. These are all very important things to understand on this build because this build, more so even than other builds, really focuses on that. Alright, so what you're going to do is you're going to bow under swap with plus the skills and faster cast rate, or just faster cast rate if it's 2 wizard spikes, which, like I said, definitely going to want to use if you're not using Insight. And we can finally start demoing this build a bit here. I actually prefer Howlings. So what you're going to do here is you're going to bow once again. You're going to use both battle command, shout, battle orders, and then battle command again before you start teleporting, and then you teleport on your faster cast rate swap. You always do this. Alright. And then you're going to seek out elites. So elites typically are colored differently. They typically have a bit like of a aura around them. And then what you're going to do is you're going to isolate them. So you cast Howl, you isolate this one, you switch back to your main weapon, and then you use Berserk, and then you switch back, or you don't switch back, depending on where you've decided you want to use your find item, whether it's your magic find swap or your faster cast rate swap, and then you use find item. And then you go back to your faster cast rate, and you go back to doing this. I really wanted to make sure that both 42 and 72 attack speed were both frame 9, and yeah, they are both frame 9, but 72 is technically a better frame 9. It's a bit more responsive. That's what I thought. So they're very similar. That's really why 42 is important. And notice that you get frozen pretty often in here. This is a max level area. This is arguably the most efficient area for this build, period. You can notice that in 1 or 2 shots you pretty much kill everything with Berserk. That is what you want. It's 100% how you want to handle it here. So this is one of the most efficient areas, period, because the monsters are low HP, and most of the time it results in a 1-2 shot. There's 6 to 8 packs in the first level, which has been made a bit more consistent even on single player by patch 2.4, I believe, or even before that. And then, of course, there's also 2 to 4 packs, even up to 4 packs sometimes in Pit 2, Pit 3, typically 3 packs though. And if you're horking at 647 and the initial kill is at 767, and even if the Mercenary gets some kills and has some MF, you're getting some crazy amounts of MF. And the more MF, the merrier. You know, the way it works when you roll an item for a monster is it goes from unique to set to rare to magic. If it fails the unique roll, it tries set. If it fails set, it tries rare. And so on down to white. If it fails magic, it goes white item. Of course, from elites though, the minimum they can drop is a magic item, unless it's a rune or a gem. And from those types of monsters, it's easiest to get, because runes are so rare in general, it's easier to get those uniques and sets. And it will, of course, try to roll those on any base item that can do it. One thing to mention though is Magic Find does not influence rune drop chance. Does not influence the chance to drop a particular base, even an elite or a high treasure class base like a diadem. That is all RNG, and it's also influenced when it comes to, you know, the rune and the base and things like that by the area level of the area as well. So all those things are taken into account, which is why Terror Zones are actually great spots to MF as well. What's interesting is Area Plateau isn't typically known as like the most efficient area, but there is one farm in particular on this character as well known to be super good. Which is Thresh Socket. Thresh Socket can drop, normally can drop like 95-97% of the items in the game. But you'll see there though, if you kill him and then you hork him with your find item, you can get up to 4 items. He's a super unique, it's consistent. I like having my Howl. I like having Berserk and Concentrate on left click so I can just use Howl on Z because they're closer buttons. I just like using the home row in general though. And doing that on this character can be nice. But notice that I'm targeting champions, elites, doesn't matter. This is a Terror Zone. A lot of Terror Zones also have low HP monsters, which is why, you know, for the first time ever as of patch 2.5, you're no longer really restricted to just farming the Pit, Pindleskin, and Thresh Socket for the most efficiency at getting those high tier real items. Or, you know, Travancore if you're really looking for maximum high rune farm chance and things of that nature, because council members are really good at dropping jewelry and charms and particularly high runes. But yeah, it's all good stuff. I wouldn't say though, unless you're farming Trav, he's definitely not one of the better rune finders, because elite monsters in general, only killing those elite monsters isn't super efficient. It's usually better to kill like tons of dense monsters in P7 or something, because you're going to get a lot more rolls on what is essentially an insanely rare item. But at any rate, you can literally just go around whatever area you want. It can be a terror zone, which can have up to, you know, level 96 area, which increases the frequency of higher treasure class bases dropping, which increases the frequency of finding those ultra rare and set items. And the reason that is that, once again, the higher the area level, the more likely a higher treasure class base will drop. In general, treasure class, of course, referring to the base itself, like a diadem, a sacred armor. Those are all treasure class 87. And ultimately, finding those ultra rare items were mostly treasure class 87 items for the most part, and some of those treasure class 84s, which are all much more probable in these types of areas. So terror zones become a very important farm. But some terror zones are just nasty. You know, maybe they just have really hard-hitting monsters. Some of them don't have a lot of elite packs. Some of them just take too much game reloading. And in those cases, the pit is still far more efficient. So the pit is a very important area to know, because it's the most efficient standard area in the game for farming the rarest item in the game, which is Tyrael's Might. And then Pindleskin will actually edge out the pit in a lot of cases for farming every item except for Tyrael's Azarath and Iraq, which it normally can't drop unless, once again, it's terrorized. Terrorized also means that the area can drop these items that it normally can't. As long as you're hitting at least terrorized area level 85, now all of a sudden, you know, if the area is normally 79 or something, now it can drop the rarest items in the game when before it couldn't. An example would be like Arcane only being able to drop up to treasure class 84, so like Spired Helms and Lacquered Plates. And then, of course, if it upgrades with a Terror Zone, now you can drop Griffin's Eye, and normally you couldn't drop that in there, and that's pretty good stuff. People definitely, you know, finding Griffin's Eye is typically very important, and this build is definitely one of the most effective ways to do that. Unless, in most Terror Zones. Unless, of course, you get a boss Terror Zone, like Dariel's Visage, and then it's better to use a build that can quickly clear a boss with high magic find. But yeah, that's kind of how it works in general. So we kind of showed off a little bit of a TZ there, but running TZs in Players 1 is good. Running max area levels in P1 is good. Lower HP is typically better, just in general. There's just a lot of areas you can run on this build. We're going to kind of show a whole bunch of different areas that are good to run. You could even run like Mausoleum in Act 1, that's another max level area. But if anything becomes terrorized and you're a high enough character level, it's super solid. One thing to note about Berserk is it's also terrible to level up with. Typically when you're leveling in a Barb, you're going to want to use something else. Like Warcry. Warcry is a lot easier to level up with to a pretty high level. Whirlwind, once you get good weapons, so obviously Frenzy Double Swing, even Double Throw is just really good at leveling. So this is Stony Tomb, another max level area. What I'm doing is most of the time I'm just staying on my faster cast rate swap. The vast majority of the time here. Gotta stay on that swap there. Notice how I horked on my main hand. Now in my case that's not a problem because I have 73 hork on my main hand. I can kind of show that here. Like once again, if you prefer to hork on your main hand, just get enough fine item for your main hand. Because now I have more MF, you know, it's about 100 plus more MF. And even with the crazy diminishing returns, that's still about maybe, what is it? Like 8% more effective unique magic find? That's significant. But notice how slow it is to work on the offhand. It's definitely a little bit slower. You'll notice sometimes, of course, you're going to accidentally work like minions that were killed nearby by the Mercenary and whatnot. or even by yourself on accident, that's just going to slow you down because you're really trying to find item the elite, because that percent chance is absolute, and being able to get a whole nother set of potions plus another magic item from an elite is insane. You know, the only other classes typically that can even compare to a barb in magic find efficiency are things like sorceresses, which have the same teleport speed, which have the similar capability to gain really high MF, if not the same. But the problem is even though they might kill things on average a little bit faster and can handle higher player count a bit better, they don't have this skill. So they can't take the elite and they can't hork it for an additional item, and that's really what makes the difference there. Alright, so let's see if we can show some more scenarios here. So Ancient Tunnels isn't typically regarded as a good area because there's magic immunes, the orange immunes in here. But there's a way to deal with them, which is Concentrate. We mentioned that before. Notice how you really don't need Leap most of the time because you're just teleporting and whatnot. But like Leap on like more budget versions of this build that don't have free teleport, it's really good. Sometimes it can also help when separating monsters that are really close together. So I'm not currently using Leap, but you definitely can. Just trying to show like some different things you can do. I might get Leap on like another version of this build here pretty soon here. It does have advantages on more refined versions of the build for sure. But for the most part, you don't need any of that nonsense. You just need Berserk, Concentrate. The thing about leaping though is that it often wastes time though as well, and sometimes it'd be just quicker to just use Berserk to power through the monsters because you kind of have to jump into the sky and whatnot. So I don't really consider it highly standard on this build, but definitely can. We didn't encounter the magic immunes in that particular one. Let's see if we can actually get those magic immunes. Let's see here. Now notice that with these mana small terms and with meditation and whatnot, our mana regen is pretty good. If you hit to about 500 mana, you're usually going to be pretty good most of the time, but notice that it's still slowly draining, right? Once you hit about like 400 or 300, you typically are going to start having mana problems. That's why some of these mana small terms can actually be quite nice. This build has a lot of very precise things, and so notice here, this is that's a magic immune. So what I did was I switched to D here and started using Concentrate. Use Concentrate against these now instead of Berserk. Just 1 point Concentrate is enough to kill them fairly quickly. And so if you really want to, you can farm Ancient Tunnels too. This is what I mean by, like, you can pretty much farm any Terror Zone. It's got a decent amount of elite packs. It's really crazy. And that's the other thing that really changed for this build, is because this build is like insanely magic find focused for most of its prominent builds, especially with all the changes made to the game and Terror Zones and whatnot. The Terror Zones, yeah, they make a big difference, and it really opens up the number of possibilities for this build as well. So there's a lot of like 2.4 and 2.5 changes that really changed how you play this build quite a bit. Alright, so we can do all that stuff. In general, like really high density areas that have very few elite packs aren't good. So things like Flare Jungle, it's just because there's all these random monsters everywhere and they kind of get in the way. Cows are bad because you have to go get the leg, and then there's just masses of cows that, you know, you have to swing one at a time to kill. Funny enough, though, the only boss in the game that you can use find item on to get an additional 6 or 5 items from is the Cow King, which I can probably show here. Let me see if I can show that actually. It's kind of interesting. Especially because it's useful for finding those treasure class 3 items like regular boots uniques like Hotspurs, regular quilted armor, excuse me. and other stuff as well. And normal Cow King is like typically one of the most efficient places to farm that. If you're doing that on single player, yeah, this is definitely a very popular single player build for sure. You're definitely going to want to make sure that you're farming that normal Cow King. And normal Cow King with this character with maximum find item, I would just max out find item, honestly. Get that 75%, go to town. Because in normal you don't really need damage. But I can show it in hell real quick here though. This is the Cow King. Isolate him. Switch. Look at that. 10 items. And you can do that normal. And if you do that in normal, that's like one of the most efficient ways to get those early game items. More efficient than normal and Dariel, and even Cold Crow too, in most cases. So keep that in mind. That's a really cool strat as well. Just a lot of really interesting strats that I could potentially show on this character. Another very nice farm area for this character. This is a standard farm area. It's not like a terror zone or something. Is Arachnid Lair. It's right next to the waypoint. Areas that require very little travel, that have decent amounts of elite packs are typically good. Since you're in Players 1, you don't benefit as much from clickables or chests, so you don't really have to have a key on you, but you can. I also recommend putting your scrolls in your belt, and then maybe only using Cane to ID things, so you really don't have to put as many things in here, and you can get as much magic find as possible with your charms. You might notice that I try to min-max that with other builds as well. And it can be really nice when you're trying to min-max magic find especially. Trying to make sure the odds are just the highest possible. For those ultra rare items are no joke in Diablo 2. They can take thousands and thousands, even tens of thousands of runs. You really those small optimizations on this insanely efficient build for farming those really can matter. Really pushing the top end of efficiency for those. That's why it's S tier. Literally can't get better at finding a lot of those items than this particular build here. In most cases, unless, you know, like I said, you get boss TZs. Yeah, I mean, those can be pretty nice, but besides that, this build absolutely crushes at that. Alright, so there's a lot more like Act 2 ones I can kind of show you. Let's kind of show you also some other very prominent farms as well. So this is Players 1. You can boost it up to Players 3 if you want, but it doesn't really increase your efficiency all that much. Mostly just want to do Players 1 even here, so you're just like one-shotting them for the most part. And in this case, you actually don't need to use Howl at all. You can, but it's usually just going to result in them running away from you, which isn't good. Of course, I am still, you know, used to using Howl for other ones, but yeah. At any rate, just cut them down with Berserk. Use Howl if it gets to be too much and they start killing you, but besides that, you're good. And then just use Find Item on them all. And with this much magic find, you're going to find stuff, absolutely, from this particular type of farm. Is arguably the most efficient way to get runes in a Berserk Barbarian. Particularly runes, obviously gold as well, and jewelry, things like even rainbow facets. But of course, just being able to hork elites will give you a bit of an advantage in that regard as well. Won't be quite as good as like a Player 7 super fast density clear like a Lightning Fury Amazon or a Poison Nova Necromancer, but it will still be very good. At any rate, Travancole's pretty sick. He's not really a boss farmer, so I'm not really going to show bossing. He's not really a chest clicker either. All those are more things, more in the domain of sorceress builds, but it doesn't mean you can't do them. A surprisingly good farm for this character is actually City of the Damned as well. The waypoint is right in the middle of the level 84 area, and 86 monsters can drop almost anything, so those would be the champions in here. And then the special monsters like Doomhead, the Hammer, the ones that you're targeting for the most part. For those maximum odds, because they're guaranteed to drop that magic or higher item, and then they have a very high chance to drop it again with the use of Find Item. 73% chance is so insane, by the way. Like, I just got to give some commentary on this change. It's like so crazy. I guess they really wanted to see Barbarian being played more, and that's a good thing. They really wanted to see people really investing in those Barbarians. But if you really put all those points in a fight item, which is easiest on a Berserk Barbarian, it's easier than any other Barbarian because you only need Berserk for damage, and Berserk just raises your damage so much that you don't need hardly any other help, and you can just like max out your plus skills, max out your magic find on the rest of the build. It really just leads to crazy efficiency on a Berserk Barbarian versus like almost every other option. Like, you could use Leap Attack and then Berserk, but it's just more janky typically most of the time. Leap Attack could be decent as well for targeting, so can like double throw is really solid as well, but there's nothing quite like Berserk for doing this. There's of course other guides for those builds, and most of those builds are better at farming higher player count than Berserk. Berserk really is low down on the totem pole of high player count, unless we're talking just isolating the super uniques, such as from the seal bosses in Chaos and just spawning Diablo. He's really good at spawning Diablo, and if your whole goal is to farm just the super uniques in Diablo for like maximum odds, he's actually got a great Diablo farm. But yeah, the champions in a level 84 area can drop almost every item. The elites and their minions can drop almost every item, and since you target the elites, it's so good. Chaos is an 85 area though, so even the champions can drop every item, including Tyrell's Might. Keep in mind though that if the terror zone hits at least 85, the champions and elites are the same in that particular terror zone for whatever it is that hour. Sometimes you have to cast Howl a bunch of different times, but that's also a situation where Leap might be kind of useful, so it's kind of up to you if you want to use it. I do consider Leap to be pretty nice sometimes. Okay. So as you can see there, spawning Diablo is essential on this character. You just pop the seals, hit the super uniques, and it's easy. And even in Players 8, it's not too bad. We'll show you guys a bit of a higher damage approach if you also want to be able to do that in high player count games. If you do it in high player count games, and besides spawning Diablo in case you want the experience from Diablo for high level characters, which like I said used to be a lot more part of the meta, it still kind of is for like level 97, 98 characters. When you have a really bad TZ like Den of Evil, you can definitely still have someone popping Diablo for you, and that could be a good idea. But if you're not doing it, which most of the time you're not anymore, you can also use high player count to do something called seal popping, but we'll talk about that when we get on that build. And you want high player count for that, so joining like a high player count game or setting it to player 7, you're going to want maybe more damage on your Berserk Barbarian to really take advantage of that. But it's definitely a very prominent Chaos strategy that Chaos Preparation is really good at employing when it comes to farming. So just keep in mind, Chaos Prep isn't just about getting the characters to 99, because Diablo used to be one of the only main sources of experience. It's no longer the case, but it's also really good at for various farming strategies as well, particularly seal popping. So the Berserk Barbarian really has a lot of possibilities. Of course, some very prominent farms, especially for weaker versions of this build. We're going to show some of those off as well. We did show off Thresh Socket because it was terrorized already, which is an important monster that you can get right by the waypoint, especially on single player. Some areas are better to farm in single player because you can get the waypoint right next to the farm area, whereas on multiplayer it might be far away. You can just save the map on single player if you just rotate through the maps and find a good one. The same goes for being really clean and linear pit maps. It's typically what you want as well, with as many elite packs as possible as well. which I know they've standardized that a bit more in D2R. It used to matter a bit more, but yeah, the number of elite packs used to be a lot more varied, but even now, it's still efficient to kind of look for those maps where they tend to spawn more often, where it tends to be a bit more linear, so that you're not, you know, going off and backtracking. Backtracking tends to be bad in general for magic finding, but on this build, it's really important to talk about those things because, once again, it's pretty much his life. Alright, so Pindleskin, this is, bar none, the most efficient way to farm Pindleskin. This build, you just teleport directly to this corner, cast Hell, switch to your main hand, kill him, switch back and Hork, or just Hork on your main hand if you're just doing max magic find. Honestly, for a Pindleskin farm, I would just work with as much magic find as possible, because you're not going from one pack to the next, you're just killing Pindleskin. The same could be said if you're farming like Eldritch and Shank, so I'll try to show that here again. Reload the game, and then stay on your magic find swap, which in my case is this. And I'm using this to teleport for teleport speed, which is good.
Salutations.
And then I'm just using that. Of course, there's ways to optimize your magic find more. If you're only farming something like Pindle, maybe you don't really care about dying as much, so then maybe you slap on the Immortal King's Helm, and voila, you have 88 MF, so you get more MF doing that. And then of course, there's other ways to optimize it as well. Maybe you want to hit harder so that he's more likely to die faster, so you want to put on High Lords, possibly maybe not Laying of Hands, but at least High Lords, possibly High Lords and Arachnid's Mesh or something, so you can maximize that. And then you can also maximize your Hork on him, so maybe you can put more plus skills into your synergies. Maybe you want to do that, so you use that, and then not Hork on the main hand with the MF. There's really a lot of possibilities on this build. And, you know, just like to inform, you know, anyone watching this guy's a pretty thorough guide. I always make the Berserk Barbarian pretty thorough, so that people understand their options completely. As it is a very important build for efficient magic finding. It's really the capstone magic finding build in Diablo 2. So it's very important that we get all this information in there if possible. Alright, so of course, besides that, you can also farm Nilithok. Oddly enough, we don't have the Halls of Pain waypoint here. Remember, you can get the Halls of Pain waypoint and still farm Pindleskin in D2R. That used to be a major issue. Used to be, but is no longer a major issue. In the halls, there are 3 waypoint configurations. There's one where the waypoint is here. There's one where it's up there, and there's one where it's in the middle. If you get one where it's in the middle down there, it's always going to be the far west, the entrance to the Halls of Thought, where Nilithok is. If you get this one, it's going to be straight down, pretty much, just straight down the side. If you get the one on the top corner, it's going to be like in the middle here, kind of like northeast-ish in the middle. If I go all the way down here, you can see, there it is, voila, it's just straight down. You're going to be looking for 2 paintings, and find the 2 paintings there, side by side, looking for them side by side. So you can keep farm like this too, because it's really easy to isolate them, to jump into the middle. Once again, you want to jump directly into the center of the pack, use Howl, switch, kill them with the weapons, switch back if you're going to Hork for faster. I also like Horking on my offhand too, because I can just Hork with faster FCR and transition directly into teleporting, if I'm doing teleporting. But once again, if you're only killing like a single boss, you might just want to Hork on your main hand magic find. Once again, there's options. World Stone, I think farming this with this build on World Stone is a lot of fun. Another max level area here. Pindleskin is a level 86 monster, so you can almost drop every item in the game. Can't drop materials though. You can just farm almost every item in the game just off of Pindleskin. So if you happen to find materials very quickly on your Grail, for instance, you can literally just sit Pindleskin and finish your Grail with this build, and you'll be doing it as efficiently as possible. Getting 4 items from one monster and just reloading the game over and over is very efficient. It used to be more efficient with faster loads, so optimizing your load time is definitely going to be pretty important if you do that. There's various ways to do that, such as lowering graphics settings, even downloading or pre-downloading your maps using a file extraction. A lot of stuff you can do for that if you're really wanting to get hardcore into this like optimal grailing thing. D2 Holy Grailing is pretty popular. It's definitely a popular in-game activity, looking for every item, because this game really made it tough to find all the items, and yeah, it's pretty insane. If you're doing a Holy Grail, the whole point is actually to get to this build, so you'd start with the Sorceress because it's the fastest farmer of those basic items. Fastest way to get that low ringer for grief, you know, fastest way to get the Shakos, like everything you need for this build. And then once you get a Barb, you know, you can level it up a bit using Warcry, and then you can just transition into just using Berserk. And ideally that's like the fastest way to finish an entire Holy Grail in Diablo 2 and find all those unique set items. Which, by the way, there's a Holy Grail tool on Maxwell as well. There's a lot of very useful tools as well, so make sure to check those out as well. Okay, so you got this. Alright, so as you can see, you can just go throughout all the Worldstone levels. They're all level 85, and since it's such a big area and it's all 85, one advantage of doing this type of a farm is that even though the monsters might have a bit more HP typically, not always, but oftentimes, you basically make it to where you don't have to constantly reload the game because you just have so many elites you can kill one after the other. But unlike the pit, the monsters aren't as low HP, and you know, they can kill you, and you might have to use some more potions because of that. So there's definitely some things to take into account there. Anyway, what I just showed off is pretty much all the major farming areas and major strategies, including the Terror Zone, of course. That's the current one on my single player. But TZs can often be even more efficient than even the pit oftentimes. It's pretty hard to beat the pit because of the low HP monsters and things like that. But of course with the TZ, like your Mercenary could even kill like a regular monster in an 88 plus TZ, and then it could even drop Tyraels. Now it's not likely in Players 1 because it's like, you know, 67% no drop, and then in Players 3 it's 34%, so it's a pretty big difference. But yeah. Alright, so we showed off pretty much the main approach. You know, you stack all this magic find, you know, showed off kind of how it works, you know, talked about a whole bunch of different things, and demoed pretty much the core of Berserk Barbarian here. However, there's a lot of other prominent approaches here. So let's say you want to increase your damage. This is something that can maybe help doing Players 3. Like I said, if you want a bit more benefit from killing the minions, you wouldn't want to hork them on purpose. That's an accidental thing if you do it, but if you do, it might, you know, killing them might give you that benefit. Horking would still have the same % chance no matter what, but it's still good. And high player count though, you know, things like seal popping with really faster cast rate, and doing that is very efficient on a Berserk Barbarian particularly, so you can definitely do that as well. You know, Chaos Prep is definitely his thing, so prepping Chaos and doing that seal popping strat, it's always a big plus. So yeah, we're gonna do all that stuff though. So what we're gonna do here is we're actually gonna show you kind of what it looks like if we go max block. So this is like something you do a little closer to in hardcore. You'd even maybe put on like a Verdungo's in hardcore if you really wanted to go hardcore with it. We're not going to do that here, but just interesting to kind of talk about. What we could do, of course, as well, put on Arachnid's Mesh. Arachnid's Mesh is really good, of course, here as well. Put on the High Lords for more damage. We're actually going to get on even more damage as well. And we're even going to hit the 72 very fastest spray point, which is, it's still the same number of frames, but it's like a faster end of that frame. Kind of completes a little faster, I guess. It's whatever. It's like a half frame or whatever, but anyway, it's a little faster. Gonna have a bit more power as well. And note here that we are still hitting 120 faster cast rate, so you can actually lower your FCR, maybe increase your Hork chance on your offhand. If you put like Arachnid's Mesh down here, the combo of High Lords and Arak is good because then you can also like get a ton of fine item by doing double Hodo or like Hodo Suicide Branch. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go like Hodo Suicide Branch, or you know what? Actually, we go Hodo Wizard Spike for even more survivability on the offhand. There's another pretty prominent approach here, which is you can also go like on hardcore. Let's say you have a shield. You might actually want to go Withered Spike Spirit because then you actually have some block while you're teleporting. You go max block with Storm Shield. You're not going to have max block on Spirit, but you'll still have a pretty decent chance to block. And the Spirit Shield itself and the Wizard Spike will still give you 85. Then 85 plus 20 will actually give you, believe it or not, exactly the amount that you need at minimum, which is 105. You know what? Let's actually show that. We can do the Hodo, of course, as well, but in order to do Hodo, we can do that. Spirit Shield is definitely, I know I didn't talk about it in the gear options, it's definitely a solid option if you're going maximum block or high in general and you want to block on your offhand while also having FCR. It also gives 2 skills, so pretty decent as well at increasing that fine item. Yeah, it's just another one of those options. So yeah, let's kind of show you guys a little bit of something like this here. This is pretty good. And if you didn't want to use a rack, you know, once again, you could use like Dungos, but then you lose your FCR, so then you need maybe a 10 FCR ring with Magic Find, and then you can't go Spirit Shield. You know, there's just a lot of things to think about when making one of these builds. Of course, we have a Cham Rune here. So you might wonder, why am I using so many Cham Runes? And why am I relying on things like Tring Built? And why would I rely even on like 2-piece Death Set? You know, why would that be a thing on this build? Or Rhyme. Once again, I'd like to emphasize this at another point in this video. No cold damage. Raven Frost has cold damage, has a lot of cold damage even. And once again, you will shatter the monsters if you kill them with cold damage. There's a % chance that they shatter, and then they don't leave a body, and that leaves your fine item very sad with no body to Hork and no possible second item. That will drop your efficiency precipitously, or a lot if you're you know, not a crazy person like me that uses $5 words. But here we go. Or at least $1. I don't know. It's worth something, right? At any rate, this is a very tanky approach. You can also go higher damage with an approach like this too, and just like really go high damage with it. This is a really hardy Berserk Barbarian that's a lot better for use in parties. Once again, if you're going to be using Berserk in parties and even horking and contributing to damage, you might want a hardier approach that does more damage. You might want to put 100 points into strength. Might want to go maximum chance to block. And of course, it will also help out a lot with spawning, with the seal popping and then spawning Diablo as a result, and then getting those maximum amount of items as a result. So there's a lot of things to kind of take into account here. At any rate, you can kind of see that if you use the shield here, you have 50% block. It's not bad. And it gives, of course, the FCR that we still need. Then, of course, we have more damage, attack speed that's resistant even to Decrepify, This build's really good in areas like Worldstone and Diablo, and the whole build itself is just a lot hardier and higher player count. And you're sick of dying in high player count because the monsters do more damage. Well, this is a top-notch approach, absolutely. So what we're gonna do here is, we'll actually even put like some more points into battle orders here, kind of show you guys a little bit of a hardier approach. What's also interesting is, if you were only doing prepping Diablo, you might have not even cared about find item on the previous versions of the build. So that's another thing to kind of note here, but yeah. At any rate, max Howl, still maxing Blade Mastery. Pretty much still the same thing. We can get Leap actually if you want. Leap is... I find Leap to be quite interesting. It's a cool skill. And if you don't need Concentrate, which remember most of the time you don't, you could even put it on D. I even said you could get Leap Attack. You kind of could if you wanted to. I mean, there's definitely a lot of elective things, but the bare bones minimum, you're not physical damage when the damage actually goes through your magic damage, so negative enemy physical resistance isn't really going to be important. This does also fear the monsters away from you, so it's kind of weird. Once again, it doesn't work on elites, kind of like Howl. So you could use this if you wanted to for like other people, but yeah, I don't know. You don't need it for your damage though. It's usually just going to slow you down. Almost always. This is something that's a lot better for like a double throw barbarian, for instance, so yeah, just keep that in mind. But anyways, so you get max find potion. I'm still gonna get very high the rest of my plus skills here. I think we're just gonna max this out actually. Let's see here. Do we actually get 70% on swap? We do. Okay. So yeah, like 70% can be fine too. Definitely. This is kind of like something in between the Chaos Prep and Hardcore variants on my Maxwell guide, by the way. It's kind of like on my written guide. But the whole point is to show you guys like a bit of a hardier build. Now you'll notice in Players 1, I basically don't take any damage anymore. With Howl, you don't take a lot of damage usually, but against like a lot of champions, you might take a lot of damage, specifically in an area like Worldstone or Chaos, but yeah. So what we're going to do is actually show this character off in some higher player count farms. So we'll do this one, we'll do Chaos and Worldstone, some pretty common testing areas. Also show you guys, like, let's say you want to farm Nilithok in high player count. This is also a solid build for that, or for like keys. You can also drop any item in the game. So you'll notice here, you can totally use Leap, and that Leap is a lot more impactful, I think, when you lack gear. Do you go to player 7? Yeah, we got to player 7. I can see this build's very hardy now, you know. Don't have to pick up a lot of full rejuves along the way because they're not taking tons of damage, you know. Like, oftentimes on the standard version, you know, you're picking up juves, and you get so many juves because you're double looting these elite monsters that always drop the item in the potions, right? So you're getting lots of potions. So good though. Well, notice though that, you know, if you really want to, you can get experience this way, but you're still only killing the elite for the most part, so it's still pretty terrible at getting experience. It's not just the elite that gives 5% bonus versus regular monsters on experience, it's also the minions, and you're not targeting them, so pretty poor experience generating barbarian build. Pretty poor at boss killing as well. But you can see even in high player count games, this character can still do what it's supposed to do. It just takes a lot more hits to kill the monsters. So for magic finding on the Berserk Barb, this means less efficiency for the most part, except what I'm about to show off here in a second. This is really a comprehensive Berserk Barbarian guide here. Hope you guys enjoy. If you want guides like this and similar ones like this, of course, you can subscribe to the channel and let me know what you guys think about these guides. Do you think they're too in-depth? Do you think they're too long? You can always go over less things, but you know, I want people that watch my videos to be a pro after watching them, you know. I want them to be like, yeah, I can master this build. One thing to note is that you can have a 6-socketed crystal sword with 6 is now on the offhand. Before, it used to slow you down. Like I mentioned, like slower weapon speeds used to be bad for the offhand, but it really doesn't matter. You can even put an Istrin, by the way, in the Storm Shield. It's kind of nice. But yeah, you can spawn Diablo really fast like that if you want. You could even get 1-point battle cry if you wanted to against Diablo to lower his defense, so basically every Berserk hit hits. That's actually an option here. He'll lower his defense and then you can just hit him even more reliability. You can also put on Gore Riders for some Crushing Blow in addition to the G-Face, because the G-Face is helping with Crushing Blow as well. Yes, you can proc Crushing Blow with Berserk Barbarian. Yeah, you see this piece of gear here? That can also be good for it. Wait, not this piece of gear. This piece of gear. Gore Riders. So yeah, Gore Riders can potentially be very good. Right, very good for this particular build. This setup, it's a lot harder for higher player count. Let's show off just seal popping now though, so let's like pop the seals. We'll show you guys the strat. Now, the Berserk Barb has 105. Ideally you'd even do this with like 200 FCR. That might be harder to do in high player count games, so 105 is just fine. So you literally just isolate the super uniques, just like we did before. Spawn Diablo as fast as possible. Look how many elite items he finds, by the way, or unique items and sets. Separate the Sace from the rest of the monsters. Notice that having max Howl is really good, or just high level Howl. I don't even have max Howl, or sorry. Do I have max Howl in this build? I do have max Howl, okay. We just put more points into battle orders instead of find item. We just sacrifice find item, which you can totally do. But having that, notice how it splits the monsters and how they're split for very long periods of time. Now after you kill all the super uniques, if you want to seal pop, teleport all the way to the bottom of Chaos here, all the way to the entrance, and then teleport back and hit the last seal. What that does is it refreshes all the monsters that you just teleported near, and as long as you refresh them within a 7-minute window, they're all going to drop loot in the player count that you're in. So if you're in player 7, they're all going to drop loot. So that means all the regular monsters will have the highest possible chance to drop loot in player 7. That chance increases at odd player count intervals from 1 to 3 to 5 to 7 in general. It also increases if you have party members nearby, but it's not super important for most purposes on this character. He's a pretty independent dude. I'll show you guys slightly faster Diablo killing. I didn't get 1 point to battle cry for this, but I think you guys can probably get the idea though. I still have really high attack rating now. That's really what you want here. You can even use AR life charms. You want some tankiness, more tankiness instead of like AR magic find charms. But notice that players 7, players 8 Diablo, you can get them low too, and then just have another player. You just pop the seals as fast as possible, spawn Diablo, get him low with Berserk, with Battle Cry, and then have someone else kill him real quick for experience. If you have like a TZ that's an F tier one or a D tier one like Tristram or Diablo, spawning Diablo can be a good way to still get experience and to race up the... If you're racing, even making use of those bad TZs can be pretty important. And so that's definitely something you can still do. That's part of his Chaos Preparation ability. So he's totally capable of all that, which is pretty awesome. I can show how hardy this particular setup is a little bit elsewhere as well. And then we're going to show you guys kind of how a more budget approach would look until you get Enigma and whatnot. Berserk Barb is one of the most efficient magic finding approaches in the early game for the Barb as well. Of course, you also have Warcry and other approaches as well, but it's going to be very important to know kind of how to do those. If you guys watch Barbarian Rags to Riches, you might have seen some early game Warcry, or Warcry and Battle, and Warcry and Berserk. Battle Command. Not Battle Command now. It's pretty bad. Okay, so we have more of those. I like my juice. Notice that it's pretty much the same thing when you play this build every time. You might have to howl a few times to get all the monsters away. But notice though, they're feared for a long time, and unless you're right next to them, they won't attack you. Sometimes if you're backed into a corner where the monsters are, this is how you can kind of use leap. You can use them to like move them out of the way, and then you can berserk them a little bit easier. Like I said though, you can also kind of like train down monsters nearby as well. Fun fact about this particular monster type here, it's actually not possible to howl it, so you can't howl this monster. Just accidentally horked on our main hand, but as you can see, I only have 1% less find item doing that. That's typically the case. So even if you choose to like mostly be using find item on your offhand for speed or whatever, for cast speed, let's say you accidentally like use find item on your main hand, which might happen. Usually only be like 1% off or something. It's not a big deal. If you optimize the you know, how much find item you have on your actual like find item swap, whichever one it is. Notice that the power of Howl really makes it possible for us to deal with even the most dangerous monsters in high player count. So even though it's not fast anymore, even with like higher damage gear or attack speed to counter E-Prep and whatnot, all the other stuff, even though it's not as fast, it's still reliable and it's fast. It ends up being really fast for high player count chaos because it tends to be difficult for most classes to do anyway, and just being able to separate the monsters makes a really big difference. It makes them one of the fastest and most effective at, once again, spawning Diablo and doing chaos prep as well. So yeah, just keep all that stuff in mind. Pretty big gains just in general. Alright, so those are all pretty much the big thing. He's pretty bad at farming Bale Waves. Anything that requires him to kill absolutely every monster is usually pretty bad. So don't do it. Like I said, you know, mostly an elite targeter. Things like that. If you start swinging at Mephisto in P7 with this, it's going to take a while unless you have a lot of Crushing Blow. You know, we do have 50% here, so it's not bad. But yeah, just keep that in mind. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to show you guys some quote-unquote janky approaches to doing the Berserk Barbarian. These are approaches that are not optimal. So let's say you just don't have nearly as good gear, which I'm sure many of you guys probably don't. Is this still a very effective magic find build for the Barbarian? Yes, it is. I did show this off in Rags to Riches Barbarian as well. My Rags to Riches series will show you how to play through the game from scratch with no help, Players 1 BattleNet, and efficiently, effectively getting rich from Naked. And you can, of course, then also show you guys the most efficient farming strategies with minimal gear. And with Berserk Berserk, of course, has those farming strategies. So what you're going to do here is, ideally, you're kind of just going to use gear kind of like this. Oath is the second best weapon to Grief. Obviously, there's, you know, I prefer Grief Phase Blade in every case. If you want the slightly extra reach, you can use Grief as Weehander, or whatever you call it, Wayhander. Not exactly sure how to say it properly, but it's okay. That happens. At any rate, in general, you know, there's all these like slightly worse approaches. One thing to note is that don't be afraid to use 2 Angelics just to get attack rating on Berserk, especially early on. You can still use War Traps. You can get like a pretty dumpster one. War Traps is just so good on this build, it's kind of hard to get away from. And then I guess we'll use... show you guys Teleport Staff actually here. Yeah, I'll show you guys You could use Harmony as well. So Harmony has Vigor Aura, which can help you run through town. I really like Harmony when like running Eldritch Shank and Pindleskin on a Berserk Barbarian. You can totally do that. However, you can also use Teleport to still be able to reposition. You could even use Harmony on top of like, so you run through faster through town, and then you can even use a Teleport Amulet on top of that. Or you can actually still get faster cast rate, and then teleport quickly, and you can use the Teleport Amulet. So there's really a lot of very interesting things you can kind of do to make your farming faster in the early game. You can get the run speed from Harmony. You can use this as well. You'll notice here I'm pretty slow at the moment, but that's because we don't have increased speed. Increased speed is really important, no matter what, on a early game approach. You can even put extra points into it if you really wanted to, but I don't really recommend it. So you can put like some extra points in a natural res. It's also possible. Generally, for the early game farms, Howl isn't always as important, but it definitely can be for like Eldritch and Shank, and honestly, just that duration. It's really key sometimes for dealing with Pindleskin and stuff like that. And if you're a very fledgling barb, you probably don't want to do any kind of player count above players.
I'll put that to good use.
Above players 1, so I personally wouldn't do it at least. And these items are kind of like a little too good for early game, but I mean they're also not insanely insane. You just wouldn't use like as crazy of a treachery base or whatever. We'll kind of simulate here what it kind of looks like. These are just still MF charms. You would still want to put MF charms in as many places as possible. But yeah, we're going to kind of try to simulate an earlier game approach here with weaker items. The exact way you do this, though, can be sometimes a bit difficult. You can also use Battle Cry if you're really having problems hitting them as well. I don't think I'm going to bother showing that off, though, because if you have at least decent items, you're not going to need it. Not really. So we are going to put a lot of skill points. Got Berserk, got Blade Mastery. Those are always the key, right? Howl, even some bow can be nice. Now keep in mind in the early game, something that's interesting about find item is in the very beginning, you're still getting 2% over 1%. So in a lot of cases, it's actually still better to like level up find item, oddly enough. So you don't even have to touch find potion if you don't want to. You'll see that it's still going up by 1%. And this is effectively 1% because it went up by 0 and then 1%. Right. Well, you know, once you hit a certain amount, though, as you may or may not have observed, you know, we'll get 1 and 2 leap as well. You're going to want find potion as well, though, once again. Just because it's like flat 1%. And we'll just kind of simulate a lower level character. We'll leave off some stat points. You'll notice Berserk is only giving us like 7,000 attack rating here. That's because we don't have the Angelic Ami. Once again, that's kind of... If you're really struggling with attack rating, that 2-piece Angelic set, Amulet and Ring, is really key. There's also other ways to deal with struggling with attack rating, like more attack rating on GCs and things like that. remember, you kind of want to be as close to 10,000 as possible. It's passable to have like 7,000 even, but it's going to take a bit longer. It's going to lower your efficiency a bit, so it's just something to keep in mind. But yeah, so one thing you can definitely do though, is you can use the teleport ammy, and you can just do that, right? I don't even really like farming Shane because you kind of have to go all the way down there, and I don't like that. But you can just run here. You can just use the teleport real quick. If you get gold, by the way, from selling these items here, it's really easy to maintain your teleport charges even on an amulet. And you can do that as well. But notice that you're still getting 2 items a lot from 2 of the best loot pinatas in the game, and it's very effective. You know, even an approach like this, it's pretty effective against something like Travancore as well. Now, without Enigma, I don't recommend doing TZs yet, or Pit even. Not really. I mean, you can do Pit, but it's really slow, right? And compared to getting 4 items from Pindle and Eldritch, which are directly accessible from the waypoints, it's never going to be as efficient trying to run through an area, even with Harmony and a teleport amulet. Like, it's still pretty rough. You can do it, but I'm not even going to show it in this guide anymore. I think I showed it in the original one because there really is no reason to do it at all, given what you can do with the other 2 farms. So until you get Enigma, you farm your runes here, you farm your godly items from Pindle. You might notice you're getting... well, that's why we're getting wrecked. Okay. I don't want to make sure you focus more points into it. I was like, why am I dying so fast? That would be why. So as you can see, Oath does plenty of damage. And it does plenty of damage, right? You just need to do players 1 Travancore to make it efficient, really. You can do P3 if you want, but I'd only do that with Grief. And even then, not really. So look how much gold we're getting, and I don't even have all my gold find. You can just kill them all, it's really easy. If you're getting clumped like that, you know, you can even howl them away and just take them down one at a time. It's kind of what you want to do in the early game. You know, you can show this maybe a couple more times here as well. And notice that on the rest of my gear, it's still mostly magic find. You'll notice that my magic find with this really weak setup, I mean, I have a lot of MF charms. You might not have it this many, right? But you might still get to like 300, 400, even 500 MF with a lot cheaper gear. Just things like Scolders, Oath, you know, IK Helm. Things that are so much cheaper than Enigma, Shaco, and Grief. It's a lot easier, and it's a lot easier to achieve. Even High Lords, you don't need it. And you can still achieve very high amounts of Magic Find and Magic Find efficiency. Oath is really strong. This isn't even like a max rolled Oath or anything. Pretty easy to deal with here. I'm just going to use the Teleport Amulet because I feel like it. To the bow like normal though. I don't even really need the Mercenary, honestly. If you want your Merc to survive Trav though, ideally you're going to want to fit him with something like... You don't want cold damage if possible, so something like Crown of Thieves plus... Crown of Thieves plus Guardian Angel stacks his fire res to 90. He really needs it because Hydra does bug damage to mercenaries. You really need that like max fire res stat. And then of course, Crown of Thieves will give him life leech and also give him more stacked fire res. You can put Row runes in them if you need to, or fire res jewels. And then using Insight, of course, for the continued sustain. But as you can see here, yeah, the Mercenary doesn't really have super ideal gear for surviving Trav. You can also just keep popping potions. You can farm the potions themselves from farming like Eldritch and Pindle, and then once you get like enough potions, you can come here, look for some high runes for a while, go back and forth. That's something I showed off in the part 3 of Barbarian Rags to Riches. But at any rate, It's a pretty good approach, and as you can see, Oath does decent damage. It's hitting pretty well. It's not insanely strong. It's not like Grief, which is like cutting them down with ease, but yeah, unfortunately, Grief is just so much stronger than like any other option, like by far, and so that's just the problem there. That's just what you kind of have to deal with. Yeah, unfortunately, the Mercenary is actually wearing. Yeah, so one of the other problems, if you do this with Treachery, you'll notice his res isn't maxed until he gets faded, and that makes him die really fast, typically in Travancore. So even something like Smoke would often be better for his survival in Travancore, oddly enough. I'll definitely find this. But yeah, I mean, obviously though, there's a lot of things you can use on the Mercenary. You know, I talked about survivability options, sustain options. Talked about the MF options in case you want him to contribute a bit. Instead of like finishing off the monsters, you might try to get your Mercenary. You might telestomp it again, get the Mercenary to finish it off. But once again, diminishing returns are kind of a thing. Rip Mercenary. Rip Mercenary. Okay, so we have this one here. Make sure you have Berserk on your hand and not concentrate on accident. As you can see, Leap can be kind of good, especially like for separating Pindleskin minions too. I mean, that 1 point Leap can be nice for sure. And then overall, yeah, it's pretty good stuff, I think. So you can just hork everything. Notice that separating them really isn't that bad of a strat, especially if they're up here, because they won't like go running off into every direction in the area. You can do that for sure. And then you don't take too much damage while you're just hitting them with a weaker weapon. But yeah, it is definitely slower for sure. What we can also do here is show you guys how to do it with even weaker gear than this. Now, we have cannot be frozen from our Tring belt there, but what we're going to do now is we're going to use 3-piece Saigons, which is pretty nice. We're actually going to use Unbending Will, which is the cheapest weapon I'd ever recommend using on this character for sure. It's not ideal, and then you can really use some really cheap stuff. So this is like the early game, and this looks very similar to Barbarian Rags to Riches. If you check it out, it should be pretty similar here. You can use some really janky stuff, like stuff that you would start the game with if you were just playing on a Barbarian. This is like the Barbarian Rags to Riches build right here. This is exactly what it is. And so, for this, for sure, I would try to get 2-piece Angelic, otherwise your life's going to be difficult, to say the least. So, you gotta get that. You gotta get that somehow, right? And I wouldn't mind the charms, but if you get any attack rating charms like that, it's going to be big. Any res charms at all, anything with just base MF. Works on these cheaper versions of these builds. It just makes it a lot stronger. But you'll notice that even with something as janky as this, maybe just having a Nasal Ring, 2 Angelics, some perfect diamonds and gear, and Bending Will and Rhyme, and 3-piece Saigons, you can still hit, you can still approach 500 MF, 400, 300 MF for sure.
Stay a while and listen.
And even with an insight as bad as this one on the Mercenary, you know, you can try to make him survive a bit here and there. Obviously, you know, you can use Bulwark, which is a new 2.6 wound word that helps the Merc survive. Bulwark plus Smoke plus like weak Insight would be really good here. There's a lot of really cheap early game gear. Remember to check the gear options in the written Maxwell gear guide for all the possible options for gear you can wear. You know, obviously things like Tarn helms would be good. You know, there's just a lot of good stuff you can wear. In case you're curious about like every type of item in between the various stages of progression. I mean, we have a starter, budget, and standard variant on the Maxwell guide, but anything in between is definitely going to be helpful as well. That P1 though, pretty sure we're in players 1, right? I don't know. Anyway, you can use even a teleport staff like this. And boom. Wow, look at that. We found an on staff doing that, see? Look how basic this gear is. Like, it's so basic. I didn't even like show this because I only had a 3-socketed one in Barb Rag Surges, but it's so easy to find the 4-socketed ones. Ideally be a lighter armor so you can run faster. And on your offhand, use a Telly staff or a Harmony, once again. Use a Telly Ami with Harmony. One thing I kind of don't like about Shank though is that can't hork him, so that's why I like sticking to Eldritch and Pendle for the most part. You can do Shank too, though. He'll give you at least 2 items, and then he'll kill everything around him, which you never know. It can give you a high rune. You can find almost any item in the game from these dudes here. Teleport staff. Exactly what I was doing here in Barbarian Rags for Riches, like exactly to a T. And any maximum damage is like plain maximum damage charms, some plain AR, some plain MF can do the trick. I mean, these charms don't really add much to your power, right? These are just adding to, you know, some of the magic find stats. So I think this is appropriate to try to show it off this way. But, you know, check out the Maxwell guide for more details on exactly how you do it with very basic stuff. And if you literally just stuck to Eldritch and Pendle, you'll have a really good time, and you can even do Travancore. Keep in mind, you don't even have to swap to Hork, really. There's no reason to. You just have a teleport staff, you don't have any FCR on your offhand. So you can just work on your MF swap, which does have 25 MF because of the rhyme. Always be mindful of like where your MF is, where your FCR is, where your plus skills are. All that factors into the efficiency of find item at all times. Alright, so
Hello.
we're getting pretty close here to the end of the guide. Hope you guys learned a lot about the Berserk Barbarian though. You're hopefully inspired to play it even early game. If you really want to play a Barb and get him stronger, this is definitely one of the best ways to even farm items even from the very beginning of the game. Obviously though, for progression purposes, you're going to want to use Warcry. Refer to Barbarian Rags to Riches for progression though.
I can't.
Yeah, we already did this. We'll do Eldritch and Shank, you know, Eldritch and Pendle one more time. We'll actually show off a couple of Travs as well as Unbending Will, which it's definitely a little tougher for sure, but you can still get it done. And Trav is so efficient on the Barb. Find item with those mini bosses, you can get 2 times 3 items from every single one of them. It's so broken. With 73%, making use of that early on. Definitely made sure to highlight the effectiveness of that in Barbarian Rags to Riches. You'll see here that, you know, we only have 57% find item. It is harder to get higher find item if you still want decent Berserk damage. You're gonna have to find that balance. If you're just doing Eldritch and Pendle though, like, don't worry about the Berserk synergies so much. You can totally instead really focus on just getting like as much find item as possible. But it does matter because as you can see, you know, the higher level of this, the higher we can really make a weapon like this, which doesn't do much damage, more damage. So it's still preference based. This balance here between find potion, find item, howl, and battle orders is always a point of contention on a Berserk build, even more so when you don't have levels or the gear level like we are kind of simulating here. The other thing Howl does, by the way, it's kind of useful. It prevents them from healing. So Howl can be good. Oh goodness, I'm gonna die. Another thing to note is if you are using a shield like this, maximum chance to block is really good. So like, I have a decent amount of strength here, but my stats are actually not super optimal for this. Like I said, refer to the written Maxwell guide for more details on any of this. But you can see here, though, we are still able to kill them, so it's pretty good. Actually, no, I'll show it one more time after just like specking for a little bit more optimal. Like, let's say you actually are using a shield. And remember, you could even use Rhyme instead of Gold Dagger on the budget version for more safety against the, you could even use Mosers with like 2 Isrunes if you really wanted to. It's another option, I think, on the Berserk Barb guide as well. On the written version. So yeah, you can really forego all that extra points in his strength, which is really going to be bad, right? And then you can really focus getting max block, which can be really nice against max block particularly, or at least some block is good, but max block is really good against Travancore. Maybe getting a couple more points into natural resistances. You know. The whole 9 yards, you know. Getting those extra points into bad orders might be nice. You get 1 point leap if you want. Can help a little bit. I personally don't necessarily usually use it, but you know, that's just what it is. And so, yeah, with that, we'll have 50%, and you can put like the rest of your points into that. As you can see here, it's a kind of a struggle how you want to optimize this, but you can always optimize it in many different ways here. I just, depending on your exact gear and exactly your preference, you know, you kind of have to just average it out. One of those things. Yeah, you get a map where they're always up here. It's kind of nice, because then you can like howl them away, and then they'll go down there. Mercenary is surviving a little bit better. I noticed that he could still use some juice. Howl them away. Having that max chance to block is pretty nice against Travancore. It's not nearly as important for like Pindleskin necessarily. I'm surprised they haven't been able to kill me, honestly. This players want it all though. Oh wait, that's right. Just Hork on the main hand, no offhand Hork with the teleport staff. Ideally though, what you would actually want, if you weren't using teleport at all, or if you had an Ami, you could also have an MF swap as well, so like 2 Gold Daggers, 2 Alibabas. And that really makes some, even despite this being as inefficient as this is, it would still make it, to do this with like, as janky of gear as this is, it wouldn't make it that bad. And you can continually farm Travancore, and if you just find one Hyrule, which on average is just like 1 in... with Hork, I actually think, with Hork being this high, it's probably like 1 in 200 to 300 runs. That's all you gotta be able to perform, and you get like a big one, and then you're rich, right? And GG. It's over. But at any rate, no matter how you play the Berserk Barbarian, whether it's standard or with you know, some early game approaches for optimal barb farming, Berserk Barbarian is a monster. It's one of the best builds in the game, period, for finding items. Not necessarily for leveling, but for finding items. You can do practically any Terror Zone, any area, max level areas being the best with lots of elite packs, especially ones that are easily accessible. And of course, ease of access becomes more important if you don't have Enigma, especially. But anyway, he's a beast. He can kill everything, magic damage, and even a physical damage backup with concentration. He really has got it all. He can stack tons of magic fine while doing tons of damage without any problems. And it's just really easy to get every stat you could possibly want on him. But yeah, if you enjoyed this guide, comment below. Let me know what you guys think and just in general. And subscribe if you enjoyed the guide. And you can always catch me at twitch.tv/darkhumility for 6 to 7 days a week of Diablo 2 action. Hope you learned a lot, of course, through checking out this Barbarian and all the different setups and all the detailed information on the Maxwell guide. The link to that will be below as well. Of course, we have so many insanely high quality guides on maxwell.gg and, of course, on my YouTube. But anyway, with that, let's get it. Dark Humility over and out. See you guys next time. Master Diablo 2. Show those Hammerdins who's boss and who's really finding the most griffins. That's right. Berserk Barbarian.